Hello, everyone. My name is Araceli Hernandez. Welcome to the Nebraska History Museum, and thank you for attending this month's Lunchbox lecture. This history lecture series takes place on the third Tuesday of every month in the Old Father Auditorium at the Nebraska History Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska. You can learn more about our museum, our programming, and all of the services provided by the Nebraska State Historical Society online at history.nebraska.gov. If you are not already a member of the Nebraska State Historical Society, I highly encourage you to join. The support of our members makes it possible to do free programs like this for Nebraskans across the state. This program is also made possible by the generous support of the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation. Thank you to our foundation. We would also like to thank LNKTV, a service of the City of Lincoln, for producing these programs. If you would like to see previous programs or check out the Nebraska History Podcast, you can find us on YouTube at NE Historical. So, on to today's program. The mission of the Nebraska State Historical Society is to collect, preserve, and open to all the histories that we share. This important work is made possible by our knowledgeable and talented collections team. Today, our Lunchbox lecture speakers are from the Nebraska State Historical Society collections team. Sondra Ryerson, our Director of Collections, will introduce our curators and their presentation. So please join me in welcoming Sondra Ryerson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sondra Ryerson, Director of Collections here at the Nebraska State Historical Society. You're in for a treat, so I will keep this short. I have the privilege of working with the incredible team of curators that you're about to hear from, and while they all do similar work on paper, their collections and their approaches to the work are wonderfully diverse. That variety makes collaborating with them and our colleagues, who I see in the audience, a real joy. Each of these curators, whether they've been here for 2 years or 30, is a specialist. They manage distinct collections, uncover new stories, help piece together a fuller, richer picture of Nebraska's history. So today you'll get a peek behind the scenes at how we collect, how we bring exhibits together, and some of the quirky, fascinating things that we come across in the archives. But most of all, I hope you leave here with a sense of just how passionate and dedicated these folks are. They care deeply about making Nebraska's history accessible today and preserving it for the future. So with that, I will step aside and let the good stuff begin with Trish. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Trisha Nelson, the curator for the archaeological collections here at the Nebraska State Historical Society. Compared to the other collection types you'll hear about today, additions to the archaeology collection are rather infrequent these days. So instead of showcasing new or even favorite acquisitions, I chose to talk about an excavation I participated in way back in 1994. You may not know that this agency's State Archaeology Office has a longstanding agreement with the Nebraska Department of Transportation. Under this agreement, NSHS staff are tasked with identifying significant archaeological sites and standing structures that might be affected by their construction. Staff include several archaeologists, 2 architectural historians, a lab tech, and a team lead. The idea is to mitigate damage to any significant cultural resources, which is required by federal legislation. In an ideal world, this would happen prior to construction. However, sometimes you get a surprise. In this case, heavy equipment uncovered the remains of a collapsed earth lodge just south of Rula, Nebraska, a little late in the game. It's not visible, but there was a large orange stain that a big road grader uncovered. This feature was identified as the burned roof fall of a house ruin. The home would have been inhabited by the region's first dedicated small-scale farmers. These plains villagers, as we call them, lived in the Central Plains during the late pre-contact period, sometime between about 1,000 and 625 years ago. Rula, by the way, is in the very southeast corner of our state, and it is adjacent to the Missouri River. The NSHS Highway Archaeology crew was alerted to the discovery and quickly went to work removing the lodge remains and documenting the excavation before any more damage was done. Here we are processing some of the excavated dirt on site, sitting on our favorite chairs, the overturned 5-gallon buckets. Very comfy. So while the collapsed lodge south of Rula predates written history, this image of an intact historic Pawnee lodge gives us an idea of what the structure might have looked like while in use. And here is a former colleague's depiction of lodge features and construction materials. These lodges were constructed of wooden posts and beams, covered by layers of wattle and daub. Wattle refers to a framework of woven sticks and fibers, to which daub, a sticky mixture of wet soil, clay, and grass, was applied to seal the home. Note the long entryway and rounded-off corners. This is a typical form of late pre-contact lodges built in the Central Plains. Also depicted are a central hearth, subterranean pit features, and central support beams. In this image, you'll see the excavated lodge south of Rouleau. You can see those elements. We've got remnants of the central hearth. It's got some orange stain to it. These are some big subterranean storage pits. Oftentimes, those are really bell-shaped, and when you excavate them, you're pretty much down in them to your neck. As well as where all of the posts were. So we've got exterior posts, and then we've got 4, central posts, although it looks like there was a lot of replacement posts, so this structure might have been inhabited for quite some time. I should say the lodge measured about 22 feet across in each direction, so that's about 484 square feet. We think it was probably inhabited by maybe an extended family of 10 or more people. Based on several factors, it is widely believed that the people who built and lived in this lodge in these pre-contact lodges are ancestral to the modern Pawnee, Arikara, and Wichita tribes. They too made a living through a combination of farming the bottomlands, fishing, gathering and hunting animals near and far. Here's an 1871 photo of a Pawnee village in what is now Nance County. So we weren't surprised to find the remains of freshwater mussels, fish, turtle, birds, coyote, deer, elk, and beaver in the once storage-turned-refuse pits, as well as the charred remains of corn, beans, squash, wild beans, sunflower, grapes, and walnuts. And the usual small side-notched arrowheads, a handstone, abraders, a stone cell that's not pictured here, some bone tools, and ceramic fragments typical of artifacts left by village farmers.
Yeah.
What was extra exciting about this excavation, however, was the discovery of a small cache containing all of these beautifully crafted stone tools and stone tool preforms. So I have to wonder, were these tools left behind on purpose? That seems unlikely. We also uncovered this beautiful ceramic vessel. It's complete, and it has a very unexpected shoulder shape. This like a very sharp break from the corner to the neck, and we just don't see that in contemporaneous lodges in this region. Also, this is the only complete vessel found at the site, and it was found upside down at the bottom of a pit. Was the vessel out of use at the time of the house abandonment, or did it fall in the pit when the lodge burned? Hopefully, I've piqued your interest in Nebraska archaeology. Before you leave today, you may have to pay, but if you would like to enjoy our museum, there's a wonderful exhibit just on the other side of this hallway, and it's called Piecing Together the Past. All right, next up, Jordan Miller.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan Miller. I am the 3D Objects Curator. That is me with a delightful mouse head from an old Star City parade. I am the 3D Objects Curator here at the Nebraska State Historical Society. I've been with the organization for 7 years, and I've been in this role for just about 3. So the 3D Object Collection contains a wide variety of materials, agriculture equipment, tools, toys, clothes, quilts, you name it, we probably have some form of it. Bulk of my job is to help build a collection that best represents Nebraskans and our mission. And to do that, I get to work with a lot of really great donors from all across the state and the country. It is a very fulfilling part of my job. Also, this picture up here in the corner is from when Nebraska Public Media came and filmed a story about our Doane Powell mask collection. So anything that we can do to create access to our collections is something that we really strive for. Another thing that I do a lot of, especially now, is work on exhibits. We're really in the throes of exhibits planning, and so today I'm going to use this time to talk about some things, some exhibits that are coming up, and some fine collections that are going to maybe be included in them. So first off, we're going to jump to Fort Robinson on the other side of the state. So this is a really incredible ship that was just donated last year. It is currently at the Ford Center in Omaha getting conservation work, and once the conservation work is wrapped up, it will be headed out to Fort Robinson History Center to go on display. And we also got to get a new case purchased to fit it specifically. So this ship was acquired by First Sergeant Vern Rawalt, and it was donated by his son last year, as I had mentioned. So Vern grew up in Avoca post-World War II, and he came from a German-speaking family. And he was fluent in German, despite his son not knowing that until about 25 years ago. But he was so fluent in German, in fact, he became a translator for the U.S. Army in World War II and was stationed at the Fort Robinson POW camp. He saw this ship, and unfortunately, we do not know the maker's name, but that is okay. It is still an incredible piece of art. And another thing that makes this ship special is it's the only one we have in our collection that's modeled after a specific ship, the Santa Maria. I'm going to switch slides here so you can see some of these other pictures. Just so the details are really incredible. So the way that Vern acquired the ship is pretty cool. The maker wanted a watch. He wanted this specific Timex watch that the nurses wore. And so a family member owned a jewelry store, and they were able to acquire this specific Timex watch. And an exchange was made, and Vern got the ship. And then we are lucky enough to have it in our collection now. And I know that the folks at Fort Robb are super excited to be able to have that on display out there. We are very excited for them to have it on display out there because it is super cool. It's such a great story to go along with it. Bringing it back to Lincoln now, and going to talk about the Kennard House. So for those of you that don't know, the Kennard House is just a couple blocks away. It is a statehood memorial. The house was occupied by the Kennard family from the 1860s to the 1890s. And there's a team of us working on getting it back open and working to create engaging programming for visitors. It is set to open early next year, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And my role in all of that is to help pick collections, both permanent and educational, to go in the space. And one of the pieces that I've selected is the finial from the second state capitol. So we are on our third state capitol. For those of you that don't know, so this finial dates from, we'll say 1889. The Capitol was built over the span of 10 years. So this is going to be featured alongside other materials relating to early Nebraska government that Thomas P. Kennard helped institute. There's a word I'm looking for that I can't find. So it's going to feature early Nebraska government materials and also period furniture and decor, materials from the Kennard's business endeavors, and materials that may have been used by the people who worked at the house too. So we're very excited to get those doors back open. I know folks are eager to get back inside the house, so we're really much looking forward to it. Another thing that we are working on is the statehood exhibit. So we are doing core exhibits in 5 phases. The first phase is the statehood exhibit, so spanning the years from 1867 to 1916. So I want to show one thing that was in the exhibit that could be in it again, and something that was not in it previously that could be in it the next time around. So this is a really cool hand cornhusker. It was invented by this gentleman up here, William Lilly. So it is the Lilly cornhusker. And he actually invented it because his father-in-law lost his thumb. So he wanted something for him to be able to easily husk corn. So in this exhibit, we really want agriculture and innovation and Nebraskans, obviously, to be the areas of focus, some areas of focus. And so this really fits that bill. So we want to be able to tell the stories of Nebraskans who were adaptive and forward-thinking and working to make the state and their communities better for themselves and everyone around them. Unfortunately, Lilly kind of bit off more than he could chew. He manufactured and marketed the corn husker and wasn't able to ever be financially successful from it, but it is still a very cool piece of Nebraska history. So the previous exhibit opened in 2001, and we have acquired a lot of stuff in the last 25 years, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I get the opportunity to go through collections and see what is new, what do we have that could be used. And this butcher knife is super cool. It was owned by a Czech butcher, Frank Vateska. I'm so sorry if I am saying that wrong. So he initially started working with his brother-in-law, Val. Val is the one with the mustache in the picture, and Frank is there photographed with the red arrow. So that picture is from about 1898 at Wheeler Meatpacking in Lincoln. And then he went on to open his own butcher store later, and this is him with the red arrow again at his own store, and that's about 1926, yeah. on North 27th. It was called Frank II Meets. So we want to be able to tell the story of adolescent Nebraska when people began immigrating and creating their new lives here, and just really excited to explore the collections to see what we've got after the last 25 years, and then also looking at the collections with fresh eyes to see what we may have missed the first time around. And lastly, to bring it to the future, or to the present, New to View is an exhibit that we just opened in June, and it's on the second floor, so a little promotional plug as well. And it displays materials that have never been exhibited before, both new and old donations. So these are some new donations that are highlighted. Women's volleyball in Nebraska is huge, as I'm sure many of you know. So we have been really, really fortunate enough to work with both the Supernovas and LOVB Omaha to collect materials relating to them. So this volleyball on the screen is from a Supernovas game, and it is on exhibit in New to View. And then we also have this game jersey. It belonged to Sophie Davis. I don't know women's volleyball, but the Supernovas people were very excited about that specific player's jersey. So I am also very excited about that specific jersey. And then the photographs are from LOVB Omaha. This is from their first home game against Madison. And so it's just super exciting to be able to be working with these teams actively as they are happening, representing women's sports in Nebraska. And they've also undergone a lot of changes in the last month, both of the teams. So we kind of got them in their very adolescent stages. So I hope I piqued your interest about exhibits, both present and ones that are upcoming, and we're just super excited to help share these stories with you all. And next up is our manuscripts curator, Tom. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Mooney. I am the manuscripts curator here at the State Historical Society, and basically that means I oversee all the private papers that get donated here. So I work with private individuals, families, organizations, and businesses to bring in new materials, and then we work to get the stuff organized, described, and made available to researchers. You can see here, this is kind of what a typical family collection would look like coming to me. It's boxes of jumbled papers and things, and it's my job to try and get it organized and make some sense out of it, to rehouse it and make it available. So a lot of what we do is, working with the individual donors to bring in the new materials, get the stuff organized, get a collection description or finding aid, as we call it, put online to make research a little bit easier for people. And then we work with researchers that come to our James E. Potter research room at our headquarters building, or we do a lot of virtual research for people as well. So a lot of people are contacting us all the time from all over the world, asking for stuff from our collections, and so we work with them all the time to get them what they need. Today, I just decided to highlight a few collections that basically I just like. I think they're cool, so I thought I'd talk about it. This first collection is relating to the Northwestern School of Taxidermy in Omaha. It was founded in 1903 by J.W. Elwood, and I believe the gentleman up there in the middle there, that is Mr. Elwood sitting there surrounded by various taxidermy. So basically he started the school. It was a correspondence school, so everything was done by mail order. So students would register, send in their payments, and once the school got their payment, then they would send out these detailed lesson plans for them how to preserve and taxidermy various animal specimens. But the collection that we have consists of some of these informational publications put out by the school, as well as these taxidermy supply catalogs. And just within the last year, I've received several more donations for this collection. A lot of people attended or went through the lesson planning for the school, so people are always finding stuff in their family collections and then contacting us to see if we could use it. And it's interesting that Mr. Elwood also ran his own taxidermy supply company in association with the school, so it was, kind of a win-win for him. He could charge the students for going through the school and then make them pay for the supplies. So, but the bulk of the collection consists of these very technical lesson plan books that you can see here, and there were different lessons for the different types of animal specimens that you were working with. There's also various stationery envelopes, things like that the school produced. And what I really like about this collection is that it really promoted like novelty taxidermy. They were big into that at the time. And so you can see here, I mean, who wouldn't want a squirrel cigar lighter? I mean, come on. Or a frog clock. I mean, they make perfect gifts, I'm sure. So you can see pages and pages of this sort of stuff in some of their publications, and it's really fascinating. And I also like the fact that they were promoting taxidermy as a way of conservation, because they would basically tell people that, you know, some hunters or fishermen would go out and try and get their limit every time. But by using taxidermy, you can just get one or two really great specimens, preserve them, and then you don't feel the need to go out and do a whole lot more. So that's one thing I really like about this collection. Here's another example of some of the novelty taxidermy that they were promoting, you know, putting animals in everyday human settings. So you could have a little office tableau here, or, you know, the family going out for a Sunday stroll. So, you know, so anyway, so it's a really interesting collection. I really enjoy it, and we get offered things to it all the time, and we get researchers that come in wanting to know more about it. So anyway, so if you're ever interested in taxidermy, we've got the collection for you. Okay, the next collection I want to talk about is a more recent donation. Within the last year or so, we received this. There's various papers relating to Jonas Rasmussen Wangberg. Wangberg was born in Norway in 1872. He came to the United States in 1884 with his family, and they eventually settled in Omaha. As a young man, he got a job as a machinist, and he became interested in the ever-growing labor movement at the time. So he was really interested in labor unions and workers' rights and that sort of thing. He was also the manager of a local amateur baseball team known as the Merchants of North 24th Street in Omaha. And so that is a photo of him kneeling in the suit next to the team. But the bulk of the manuscript collection that we have consists of these really interesting union publications that he produced himself. They're all handwritten and hand illustrated. And it's just a really fascinating little collection. You can see some of the great handwriting that he has here, and he, you know, hand illustrated all of these little publications himself. So I can't imagine how much time this would have taken him. But obviously he didn't produce a whole run of these things, but it was more so to kind of record what was going on at the time, what his feelings were towards workers' rights and that sort of thing. And so I think he would go around, he became kind of a labor union organizer and promoter. And so he would travel around the state trying to get workers to unite into unions. Here's another example of one of his little publications, and it was called the Labor Temple Ferret. And he did all of these little illustrations himself. He seemed to be quite the artist. So it's just another fun little collection. If anyone's interested in like the early history of labor unions in Nebraska, this would be a good collection to check out. He founded the Southern Pacific Federation, which was a conglomeration of local unions that ran alongside the Union and Southern Pacific Railroads. But so he was active in labor unions in Nebraska until about 1928. And then that's when he ended up moving on to California. And so he worked out there for a number of years and eventually passed away in 1946. But this is just a great little collection that we received from a family member a year or so ago. And we're always on the lookout for kind of cool things like this. And so we were just really excited when we got this collection. So moving on, the last collection that I want to talk about relates to the Nebraska's big rodeo at Burwell. And obviously that just came about this last month. But we have a collection relating to the rodeo. It consists of a lot of these informational brochures that they produced every year. This particular one happens to be from 1929. And you can see that it folds out, and there's a diagram of the rodeo setting of the arena. There's various photos, lots of information about the different programs, the different events that were going on at the time. And we have a nice selection of different ones throughout the years. Most of our stuff starts probably in the 19-teens and goes through about the 1960s, 1970s. But the rodeo itself actually started in 1921. That's when they held the first rodeo there at Burwell. And they've held a rodeo ever since. The only exception was for 3 years from 1943 to 45 during World War II. They suspended it. But otherwise, they've had one every year. And so here's a selection of some of the informational brochures that we have from 31, from 58, from the 60s. So we have a nice representative sample. It's not a complete collection, but it's a good representation of what was going on. Also included in the collection are these daily programs that would have been given out to people that were attending each day. And so that would have a list of the different events and the participants, and then people could record scores or times for each one and kind of keep track themselves each day. These would have been handed out for free, anyone that was attending the rodeo. Here's a couple more examples from the 1950s. You can see the little bit different designs, but pretty much the same sort of information. They also sold these souvenir programs. You can see here, these are much more professionally produced. That's why they were sold. You can see the one here in 1948 sold for $0.25. And then in 1955, it was up to 35 cents, but still a pretty good deal at the time, I think. So, and then finally, another part of the collection contains these. We have a lot of stationery and envelopes that were produced by the rodeo over the years to kind of send out promotional information. And so I just thought I'd include a couple of these interesting designs that they put out over the years. This one, I'm not sure of the date on it. I'm guessing it's probably late 1920s, early 1930s is my guess. You can see here, that's the back of that envelope with the bucking bronco, which is kind of cool. Here are a few more examples of things over the years that they produced, and I just love some of the colors and some of the designs that they did. And what's kind of interesting is just within the last week, we were contacted by a potential donor that had some more materials relating to the Burwell rodeo. And at first it went to my colleague, Jordan, because we thought it might be some artifact-related things, but it turns out it's more programs and other things like that, so she turned that over to me. So I will be working with that donor to bring in some more materials, and these would be more recent programs from probably the last 5 to 10 years, which will be a nice addition to the collection. And what was kind of funny, the reason why I picked this collection was because earlier this year, back in March or April, I think it was, we had a class come from Burwell. And so we got to pull out some cool stuff like this and show them, and they were really excited about it and got to look through some of the Burwell newspapers on microfilm, and they were pretty excited about that too. So anyway, so that's kind of what I have to talk about today. So I think I will turn this over to Matthew Mickelson, our photograph and audiovisual curator.
Good. Hi. Hello, everyone. I am Matthew Mickelson. I am the photograph and audiovisual curator. I've been with the Nebraska State Historical Society for about 2.5 years now. Just give you a quick rundown of our photo and AV collection. So it's estimated that we have roughly 1 million photographs in the collection, spread out over 2,500 unique collections. And then for audiovisual materials, we have about 50,000 moving images and about 9,000 sound recordings. So roughly 60,000 items in that collection. So today I will be speaking about the Don Wright collection and how this collection ties into what we call our strategic focus areas. So these are areas that we are kind of focusing some of our collecting efforts on in an attempt to kind of fill what we call gaps in the collection. So these 5 areas include agriculture post-1950 in Nebraska, contemporary Native Americans living in Nebraska, current events as they impact the lives of Nebraskans. So as I'm going through this, you might be thinking, a lot of these events that were documented were from the 50s to the 70s, so not, necessarily current, but, I'm arguing that at the time that Don was documenting these events, that they were current events that were impacting Nebraskans, and in some cases, we still feel the effects of today. Finally, pop culture as it impacts the lives of Nebraskans, and then sports and recreation in Nebraska. So just a little background first on Don Wright. So Don Wright was a longtime lead photojournalist for KOLN TV, having started there in 1953 before retiring in 1986. In that role, he covered the Starkweather and Fugate trials as the lead photojournalist, and then also captured the response of Nebraska in just 2 national and international events. He covered Husker athletics, including football, basketball, track and field, 6 presidential visits, the 1955 state penitentiary riot, as well as the Wounded Knee trials in the 1970s. In 2017, he was inducted into the Nebraska Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame, and then he passed away in 2022 at the age of 98. And then the collection was donated just last year by his son. So starting with agriculture, so we'll talk about the Lincoln JCs. So kind of billed as the official kickoff to the National Junior Chamber of Commerce Convention, the Lincoln JCs took over O Street in downtown Lincoln on June 15th, 1960. The cattle drive lasted about an hour and kind of served as a fundraiser for the Lincoln JCs to cover expenses to attend the convention later that year in St. Louis. Over 70 head of cattle were paraded down O Street, as you can see here, and then they were loaded onto trucks and driven to Missouri. Much to the chagrin of the Lincoln Journal-Star, was reporting at the time, no hoof tax was charged that day. Unfortunately, so that's that. Then we'll talk about the 1977 tractorcade. So on December 10th, 1977, Lincoln experienced what has been called one of its quote-unquote worst traffic jams ever, as over 1,000 tractors and farm trucks descended on the Capitol to send a message. The farmers were going on strike. So the event was organized by a group called the American Agricultural Movement and was part of a nationwide protest in response to what was then becoming a farm crisis in the United States. So farm income had been strong in the early 1970s, but by 1977, record crops had pushed prices down and farm costs had risen. Banks were no longer willing to loan to small farmers, and many were in danger of losing their farms. So movement leaders announced that farmers across the United States would stop buying or selling on December 14th unless the federal government met their demands. They wanted farm programs to ensure quote-unquote parity, meaning that generally farmers' income and expenses would be balanced, leaving enough left over to provide for a reasonable standard of living. Opinion polls showed that most Nebraskans supported the strike. This included the governor at the time, J.J. Exon, who rode on the back of one of the tractors to a rally that was held later that evening at the Devaney Center, where he and former Lincoln Mayor Helen Busalis were among the speakers addressing a crowd of 6,000 strike supporters. In the end, the strike unfortunately failed, and the farm crisis would continue to deepen into the 1980s. Moving on to contemporary Native Americans living in Nebraska, we'll talk about the Wounded Knee trials. So on February 27th, 1973, over 200 members of the Oglala Lakota tribe, led by members of the American Indian Movement, took over the village of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. The 71-day occupation was in response to perceived corruption in tribal leadership and to the United States' failure to honor treaties. After 71 days of negotiations between activists and federal authorities, the activists surrendered on May 8th. In July of 1974, the Wounded Knee trials, which had begun in South Dakota earlier that year, were moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, and lasted until January of 1975. AIM leaders, including Russell Means and Dennis Banks, who you see here with actor Marlon Brando, visited Lincoln and were present during the trials. In the end, 6 defendants were found guilty, though 4 of the convictions were later overturned, and the 2 remaining defendants were sentenced to probation. And moving on to what were then current events, we'll talk about the Tilden tornado. So on May 21st, 1962, a large F3 tornado tore through the town of Tilden in Antelope County. The tornado was part of a larger outbreak of tornadoes that had touched down in a 2-week period. So around 100 homes and businesses were damaged in Tilden, including the Neville family home, which you see here, as well as the local Catholic church, where the roof and part of the side of the building were completely destroyed. There were about $1 million in damages were reported, which equates to about $10.7 million in 2025. And we'll talk about pop culture. So born in 1931 in Ovilla, Texas, Liesl Travis Martin eventually found his way to Lincoln, where he performed on KOLN-TV as head of the band Marty Martin and his KOLN-TV Rangers. The band found local success in Lincoln and performed at several music venues in the city, including the Playmore Ballroom. So following Marty's stint with the KOLN-TV Rangers, he would go on to have later fame as a member of the Grand Ole Opry and often performed in Branson, Missouri in his later years. Some of you might know him better by his stage name, which he later adopted, Boxcar Willie, which he reportedly came up with while living in Lincoln. Then on October 5th, 1980, Elton John performed to a crowd of 11,895 at the Bob Devaney Sports Center. His 2-hour set was met with roaring approval from the crowd, and he performed many of his greatest hits, including Tiny Dancer, Rocket Man, and Benny and the Jets. John's first outfit of the night was described by the Lincoln Journal-Star as, quote, something left over from a dream about a Cornhusker football game. So the success of John's concert led to officials at the Devaney Sports Center to consider using the venue as an alternative to the Pershing Center. Then moving on, finally to sports and recreation. On November 24th, 1959, tennis legend Althea Gibson, who was the first black player to win a Grand Slam title, played an exhibition match against Carol Figueroa in Omaha. So in 59, Gibson had signed a $100,000 deal with the Harlem Globetrotters to serve as the opening act before players would take to the court. So an estimated crowd of 4,600 turned out that night to watch the tennis stars and later the Globetrotters. And Gibson would go on to win the match, and out of 118 matches played between Gibson and Figueroa during that season, Gibson won 114 of the matches. And in January of 1955, Jackie Robinson was invited to speak on behalf of the National Conference of Christian and Jews in Omaha and Lincoln. So on the 26th of that year, in January, he made appearances at the Rotary Luncheon, followed by a visit to the Fontenelle Hotel. The future Baseball Hall of Famer also made visits to local schools, including St. Benedict's Grade School in Omaha, where he received a special award, which was presented to him from students and faculty, and read, "To Mr. J. Robinson for distinguished personal contribution to the great ideal of the brotherhood of man." Then finally, we'll talk about the Lincoln Chiefs, which were a minor league baseball team active in Lincoln from about 1908 to 1961. The team underwent several name changes, but were known from the Chiefs for the last part of their, while the team was active, So they played at Sherman Field during the 1959 season, and you see some of the players that were on the roster at that time, including on the top row, left to right, Deacon Jones, Jim Lynn, and Richard Kimball. And then on the bottom row, left to right, Richard Tunis, an unknown player, and then Jose Valdares. The team won minor league titles in 1923, 34, 56, and 57. Though by the late 1950s, the final league it was part of saw declining attendance, and in 1961, the league folded. Lincoln would be without a professional baseball team for 40 years until 2001, when the Lincoln Salt Dogs were founded. Then the pictures that you see up here were from their final home opener of their final season, which was played on April 28th, 1961. So, yeah, and with that, I will turn things over to our state archivist, Anna Holley.
Hello, my name's Anna Holley. I'm the state archivist, and I oversee the government records collections here at the Historical Society. Our government records collections include records from a lot of different levels of Nebraska government. So all the way from the top, we've got things like the governor's office, legislative records, Supreme Court records, to things from counties, like records from the county clerk's office or the Register of Deeds, to records created by municipalities, which is where some of the records I'll be talking about today came from. The collections span from the 1850s to today, and there's about 20,000 cubic feet of paper records, over 100,000 reels of security microfilm, and we've also begun to collect born digital records, which are basically just records that have never been printed before, so things that are only digital. And sometimes people might think that government records are a little bit boring, and they're not totally wrong, especially compared to some of the cool stuff we've seen today. But I'm here to tell you today that we do have some cool stuff, like what I'll be talking about, which is records from the Pershing Auditorium. So if you're like me and you grew up in Lincoln, you probably have great memories of this venue, and we just received this collection in late 2023, so we're still working on processing it. A little bit of history, in case you aren't familiar with the Pershing. It was a long work in progress from the very beginning. They started collecting a tax for the auditorium here in Lincoln in 1938, and then they finalized all their plans in 1955, finally opening on March 10th, 1957, kicking things off with a dedication that included Johnny Carson, who grew up in Nebraska. And the auditorium was really intentionally designed to host all kinds of events, not just concerts, and was really a gathering place for the entire community. And it remained that way for 57 years until it closed in August of 2014 and was finally demolished just a couple years ago in 2023. However, its legacy lives on as we work to preserve its history. So when we received this collection, it came to us as just 70 unlabeled boxes. And as you can see, receiving the records was quite dramatic, as illustrated by my colleague Nolan, who definitely did not almost get crushed by these pallets when they were dropped off. He's totally fine. But our job, kind of like Tom mentioned, is to go through all these records and arrange and describe them so that they look like the photo on the right, which is a picture of our stacks, all organized and arranged, and so people can ask to see them. So this collection contains several different types of records. There's show files, meeting minutes, photos, and then some facility records, and I'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So the show files make up the bulk of this collection. There's like 52 boxes of records of these. And as you can imagine, there's basically thousands of files. There's one for every event that took place at Pershing over the years. And for things like concerts, this includes, each file includes documents like contracts, correspondence, invoices, work orders, box office statements, and sometimes, if you're lucky, promotional materials like photos, tickets, and flyers. So here are some examples of concert photos from the collection. There's a photo of a Kiss concert that happened in 1990 and some promotional photos of Iron Maiden, plus their contract for when they played in 1983. And then here's just some like fun stuff from like memorabilia that you can find in some of the show files, a bunch of different tickets and things. So you've got Cheap Trick, REM, Judas Priest was like $9 in 1983. Seems like a good deal. Def Leppard, and then some Kinks tickets as well. Let's see. Concerts are fun, but the Pershing was also a venue for all kinds of local and community events as well. And I'm sure many people have a memory of attending a graduation, a dance recital, a basketball game, a festival, trade show at the Pershing over the years. So this photo on the left shows people strolling into the auditorium for a free country concert sponsored by the local radio station KECK in February 1971, which was headlined by Waylon and Willie, which is probably really good, guys. And then the photo on the right captures a parade float of a roller skating boot sitting on a little tiny replica of the auditorium itself, because the auditorium was the host for the American Amateur Roller Skating Championships for many years. A few more photographs. Sometimes with the photographs, I will say they're not all as exciting as what I'm showing you here today. Sometimes, like, we would open a file that says it has a concert or rally or something on it, and instead of being cool photos like this, it's like a picture of how the stage was set up so that they could set up the stage again, like in a similar way in the future. But sometimes they do have cool photos like these where you can really see like the size and scope of the auditorium, and I feel like it really captures the excitement of the audience as they were getting ready for this concert. We also have a lot of facility records in this collection, which capture things like renovation plans, building improvements, and information about like the building itself over the years. But they do have some fun things, like this is a blueprint showing the original seating arrangement for the southwest section of the auditorium. And the file even included like fabric samples. Like you could see they were picking out what fabric to use on the seats in the auditorium. And I will say, though, they kind of smelled a little weird after sitting in those boxes for so many years. But we kept them. And then the facility files also have some cool marketing materials, like these pamphlets and brochures and posters that would have been included in informational packets given out to prospective bookings. And then I feel like you can't talk about the Pershing Auditorium without mentioning the mural that was on the front of it for so many years. And so when the building was destroyed in 2023, the mural was saved through the efforts of the Pershing Mural Historic Preservation Committee. And I know there's currently plans to reinstall the mural at Wayuka. You might have seen the huge wall that they've built in the cemetery, kind of near the pond when you're driving down O Street. And I know they're still gathering donations, so the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation is gathering donations if you'd like to support this effort of moving the mural to Wyuka to be on display, still within the community. Then also, if you are, want to see more of Pershing while you're here at the museum, you may have noticed one of our newest exhibits just out in the hall here, featuring the mural, called Tactile History, and it's like a 3D model that lets you touch and feel the forms and the figures that are found on the mural's image. And then I think someone talked about New to View, which is upstairs on the second floor. Also has some cool photos of the auditorium as well. So please do stay and explore our wonderful museum now that the lecture is over. Thank you. All right. I believe we have time for some Q&A if anybody has questions. And while we're getting some questions ready, I will do a quick plug for our next 2 Lunchbox lectures. Luckily, Nolan Johnson was not squashed by Anna's boxes and will be our presenter for next month in September. He will be presenting The Archaeology of Courthouse and Jail Rocks, 12,000 Years in the Making. And then in October, actually, members of the Pershing Preservation Committee will be here to talk about their project. So, yay, quick preview for the next 2 months. Does anybody have any questions for our curators? I feel like that's a lot of stories. We're still thinking. Oh, yes.
By meaning what?
Yes.
Were there any further lodges found in the Rouleau excavation?
Trisha.
Yes, there actually was one more. It was just across the road. It was another late discovery, and that was an interesting one. It was much smaller, didn't have as many features, and it had some later, somewhat contemporaneous, what we call Oniota ceramics there. So yeah, that was a neat find. Yeah, thanks for asking.
So I have a box of stuff in my closet that I'm going to give you. And because, Tom Mooney's, box of things that you showed us, Tom, but, and folks, I'm the director of the State Historical Society, so it's maybe a planted question, but it comes from the education I've received from the staff. So when somebody has stuff, what's the best way to engage about the potential for donation?
I'll let Sandra tell.
We're all listening to each other. They're all looking at me. So I think this was a strategic move on the curator's part. The email address is the best way to get a hold of us because this is something we triage daily, multiple times a day. And so if you got anything that you're interested in offering for the collections, send us an email, give us as much information as you have about the thing, include photos if you could, and then we forward things to the right curator. So you've seen much of the team here, but we've got others as well. And so any questions you have about anything that might be in the collection or for the collection, send us an email.
Also related to that, if I just am going through town and I just want to drop something off, can I do that? And if not, why not?
So our research room over at the headquarters building at 1500 R Street is available for researchers. We require appointments on Mondays, but then you can come in and look at things from the collections Wednesday through Friday. So come on over and research the collections. If you have something for the collections, we really do need you to make an appointment. The curators have to do some research, look at what we already have, because if your stuff duplicates what we already have, then we want to be really careful about how we use our space. We have to be good stewards for the people of Nebraska, right? So the curators need to do some research ahead of time, and so ideally let us know and give us as much warning as you can. If you have those travel plans, we can be flexible, so just let us know.
As the public, how can we, or are we able to access some of this information especially like the legal documentation that you have?
Yeah, so all the curators could probably specifically speak to this, but our research room is a great place to start. So if you have any general question, send us an email or pop into the research room when we're open if you're local. But we get, it's what, not 80-90% of our researchers are working with us online rather than coming in person, because we can pretty efficiently answer questions. In terms of getting physical access, a lot of our materials, our archival materials, are in our headquarters building, but Anna showed you some photos of our offsite storage. So in North Lincoln, we have a warehouse. It's full of stuff. If we need to bring stuff to the research room from that building, we need some time to get it downtown. Our object collections are largely here in Lincoln as well, but they're also at our historic sites across the state. So it really depends on what you're looking for. So just get in touch with us ahead of time if you can.
So when you're weeding through stuff, do you ever like go through things and go, we don't need this anymore, let's chuck it?
I'm looking at these archives. So cute. Who's going to take it? I haven't weeded a thing, so.
So yes, occasionally we do what we call curatorial surveys. So just kind of going through, looking at our collections. And, if there is something that we feel, is a better fit for another organization, we do contact those organizations just to see if it's something that they would be interested in. But, we always try to make that effort before we get rid of anything. And then we do have a process for deaccessioning things. So it does have to go through a committee. And then we do have to get approval from Daryl before anything is removed from the collection. So.
Can I speak to the Smithsonian turns?
Oh, yes. Actually working with the Smithsonian right now on a photo collection that we had deaccessioned, and they have material related to the person whose collection it was. So they have some documentation. And so I contacted them and asked if they would want the photos, and they said that they were interested. So actually be working with them over the next couple of weeks to get that mailed to them so they can have that for their collection.
And why was that not of interest to us?
Thank you. Yes. Fell outside of our collecting scope. So just kind of related to a doctor, and then I hope I'm saying this correctly, an ornithologist who studied birds who lived on the East Coast. So somehow the photo collection made its way to Nebraska, and through this curatorial survey was determined that really did not have any connection to the state. So we felt it was a better connection to the East Coast. So,
yeah. And I'll just say, There's a difference between deaccession and weeding. So when archival collections come in, when manuscript collections come in, you saw the rehousing that has to happen. If they find duplicates of things, those are things that get weeded because we don't need to retain so many duplicates. But the deaccessions that Matthew was speaking to, that has a whole rigorous process.
My uncle, who died 20 years ago, donated over 6,000 things to the Historical Society. Among them, I think there was some jewelry that my great-grandmother had brought over from the Czech Republic, and I just wondered, what are the chances you might still have it in storage somewhere?
Yeah, I think very likely within jewelry. And if it's jewelry, it's a 3D object collection. But yeah, if you could send us an email, she can look up that donor record and we can tell you exactly how many objects we've still got in the collection. And she'd be happy to set up an appointment where you can come in and view them. Yeah. That's a regular part of our work. So researchers come in and they may not have any relationship to the collections, but donor descendants are another frequent contact for us. We also have cards. Oh, we have business cards. So if you don't have a way to record that email address, just ask for one at the front desk on your way out.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, can I get a quick thank you again to our presenters, Sandra, Trish, Jordan, Tom, Matthew, and Anna. Thank you very much. Another big thank you to the generous support of the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation and LNKTV for making this program possible, and a big thank you to the Society and museum staff for staffing, planning, and supporting this program, not just today, but every month. And we hope to see you again next month. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah.